Sony fans rejoice as the upgrade to the Mark series has arrived in the form of the Xperia 1 Mark IV. There was news that the auto mode would be improved, and that's what we're going to be checking out today in this comparison. Even though this camera phone would still benefit more from being in the hands of professionals because of a million different adjustable settings present in their camera apps, Sony making it easier to just point and click will definitely help their marketability to the general public. Accompanied by the iPhone 13 Pro Max and the Galaxy S22 Ultra, it's time to let the facts speak. First thing I notice is something positive. I like the photos coming out of the 1 Mark IV. In our other comparisons, we've often had issues with Sony phones because unless you put in some effort to manually tweak the settings, the photos didn't look that good. Sure, they looked amazing when you did play around with the camera app, but that's not the point of a comparison, and I'm sure y'all understand. I mention this often while going through the photos, but there won't be any need for that this time because there are no big errors or issues with the photos, and frankly, I've always kind of been a fan of this natural look. The S22 Ultra and the 13 Pro Max are as you know them from the previous videos. A couple of photos are a bit dark with a few shadows on the left side, but this won't disparage the general high quality photos coming from Samsung. Same could be said about the old habits of the iPhone because of their warmer photos based on the white balance, but they've done a stellar job in the majority of the photos as well. Ultra-wide is gonna make me bring up some inconsistencies that I'm pretty sure I mentioned before. There are certain situations where the iPhone struggles with dynamic range if you're taking photos with the ultra-wide camera. In these back-to-back photos, the sky is completely blown out, and while whatever in the foreground is more visible than the other two, the photo doesn't look too nice as a whole. I've no doubt that Apple has this on their to-fix list for the iPhone 14, but for now, Samsung and Sony look to have optimized their ultra-wide camera better, which will lead them to be tied for first, with Apple following right behind them for now. The reason I say this is due to the fact that portrait mode is coming in hot. Sony's never historically been good at this mode, simply because, well, I don't know how to say it more bluntly, but they just don't care. To me, it looks like quite basic software that's been tinkered around a bit with the addition of things like adjustable bokeh, but it doesn't look that natural, and there are quite a bit of errors around the edges. There have been videos where Samsung has overall shown a better performance than Apple, and also vice versa, so it's not a surprise to me that here, they pretty much look equal. Even some of the photos between the two look really similar, with the main difference being them being the iPhone having a slightly brighter look. Apple looks to claw back into the competition with a first place finish tied with Samsung, as Sony's portrait mode is okay for some basic shots, but that's pretty much it. Obviously, it's not really their forte, so I'd rather check out the videos. And while doing this, I realize that things are starting to get really interesting. The footage coming out from these three phones are completely different. Let's freeze the frame right here. First thing I see is a non-existent dynamic range on the Sony compared to the other two. Anything else? Well, the leaves and the other details on the ground are quite blurred and out of focus on the S22 Ultra, possibly because we have the Exynos version. The iPhone is performing as always when it comes to video, and let's keep going and check out the next one where we see similar traits. Samsung's latest flagship is just underwhelming when it comes to these videos and can't give the consistent results that iPhones do. While Sony could be a bit brighter, I appreciate the natural look of the footage. On ultra-wide, the sky is blown out on the Sony. The trees do look nicer than the S22 Ultra though, but what the iPhone lacks in ultra-wide photos, it does not lack this in ultra-wide videos, at least in this competition. 8K is an experimental bonus feature on the S22 Ultra, as you have been made aware many times before, and while it does have pretty good quality close-up, the deeper you go, the worse the quality gets. Overall, the iPhone hands down is the king of videos and manages to win the majority of the comparisons that it takes part in. I prefer the videos from the Sony 1 Mark IV to the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, but the ultra-wide camera is a bit lacking on Sony's side, so they'll be tied for second place. The continuation of video will be the stabilization feature, one that shouldn't be too hard for the S22 Ultra, though it's important to mention that Apple has very good embedded stabilization while there is little movement. Activated stabilization is of course another story, and I like the improvements Sony made to the 1 Mark IV over their previous flagships, but the Galaxy can do one better as it has less jitters and slightly more stable footage than the Mark. I guess we can keep adding on to the categories that Samsung prefers, as Sony and Apple are pretty much the two brands that could care less about zoom, and I think Samsung is a brand that either cares the most or is definitely somewhere at the top of the list. I think it's cool that the more you zoom in, the more natural that the 1 Mark IV looks compared to the Galaxy and the iPhone, but it will will be the only saving grace, as after a certain point, the quality starts going downhill, along with the iPhone of course. I'm kinda looking like Max Payne on the PlayStation 1 on the right side, and it's kinda funny to be honest, but yeah, all in all, my advice would be to not go further than 5x if you don't have a 10x optical zoom. Sony has the upper hand at the early levels compared to Apple, but not compared to Samsung, who will take the gold medal with zoom once again. So now, flip the phone 180 so we can get on with taking more photos and videos with the front camera. The One Mark IV's white balance is way different than the other two, and just as a side note, the front cameras of Sony phones are often low quality. It's pretty much the same for the video feature of the front camera, as Samsung and Apple are on the same page here, being tied for first, and Sony taking a seat right behind them. Same can be said for slow motion, as even though Sony is very special in this category because they record footage in 4K, it's unfortunately only available in 120 FPS, so the detail you're looking for is really not there. When the conditions are right and the 960 FPS of the S22 Ultra doesn't look too bad, then it clearly excels with the different options it gives you in slow motion, giving it the 3 points. I'll say that the iPhone is tied with the Xperia here, since 4K is quite cool even though I don't think 120 FPS is enough. Speaking of not enough, I find it interesting that there's a macro mode in the Sony Xperia Mark series, but it just doesn't work. You see the sign on the display telling you that the software knows what you're doing, but the results say otherwise. I love the macro mode on the S22 Ultra, as you can get some insanely close-up shots over here, but the 13 Pro Max just does it one better, as this is one of the, if not the best macro capability on a phone right now. Chalk up another 3 points for Apple and 2 for Samsung here, while we delve into the autofocus category. Very surprising result here, as the iPhone's facial recognition skills weren't in the spotlight. Frame by frame, the S22 Ultra is the first one to focus on my face, and the One Mark IV comes right after. You can also test this yourself if you'd like by putting this video at 0.25 speed and seeing the results for yourself, and I have no doubt that we'll reach the same conclusion. And we're back here. We're going to check the mic quality of these devices. Thank you once again for sticking with us in the video until this time. On the right side is the pride of Apple, the iPhone 13 Pro Max's mic quality. Here we have the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, and in the middle is the brand new Sony Xperia One Mark IV. The Xperia's mic kinda warps my voice, and it's not too different with the Galaxy. I don't think the iPhone's mic is top notch by any means, but it is a bit better in windy conditions and at least retains the quality closest to the original. I still prefer the Galaxy over the Xperia because of the noticeable differences, so they will take the second and third place respectively, while we bring everything full circle with some night mode footage. This was pretty hard guys, because as you will see, each phone had areas that they just performed better in. In some photos you had Sony looking pretty natural while managing to provide adequate focus, even though that gets harder to do when the brightness is turned down. In some, Samsung was just straight up better, as the automatic white balance adjustments caused a red tint to appear on the Sony and the classic yellow one on the iPhone. There were even a couple of photos in which I liked the performance on the side of the 13 Pro Max, and even though everyone knows by now that taking photos with an iPhone at night isn't just really the smartest thing to do, it was just a circus all around, and there's honestly no way to determine an ultimate winner at night, as the results change from one photo to another in such a drastic way that it would be a crime to say one of them actually did the best. While I do think that the Xperia and the Galaxy do take better night photos overall at night than the iPhone, the reason this whole category will be a tie is because the video quality of the iPhone is unmatched, and it shows this off effortlessly even at night. Hands down the winner of the night videos, but unfortunately not the night photos. We're finally at the end, and if you stayed until now, do like this video and subscribe to our channel to make our effort worth it guys. The winner of this big comparison is the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra with 30 points, while Apple's iPhone 13 Pro Max is going to be coming in second place with 25 points. The Sony Xperia One Mark IV did shine in some spots, but the less detail in smaller categories will result in a total of 22 points. There's also one annoying issue that we had with this device, and that was the overheating problem, which forced us to stop shooting footage about every 15 minutes. This unfortunately is a common issue in Xperia devices, and Sony really needs to find a fix for this ASAP. Leave a comment below telling us about your thoughts and what else you would like to see from us, and we'll see you in the next video.